Thank you very much, Ahmed, and I'm so sorry to have had to cut you off in mid-flow. But we'll be having a discussion at the end of this session.
Okay.
And then there will be more time to discuss the many interesting things you've told us. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
Thank you.
We have Jérôme Norris.
Yes.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Hello.
I take the opportunity to say hello to Ahmed and to thank him for his wonderful presentation.
Good, very good to see you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, just wait till he's got his screen going. Right.
So, can you see this?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you very much. So, Jérôme has done a lot of wonderful work on the epigraphy of Northwest Arabia, particularly, and is continuing to do it. So, without wasting any more time, I'll let him speak.
Thank you very much, Michael, for the introduction. So I take the opportunity to thank both Juan Tebes and Michael for the organization of this meeting and for having invited me to give a lecture. I should say that I appreciate very much the fact that the meeting is focusing on both the Levant and Northern Arabia and also its long-term approach, which is very inspiring. So, historian who wish to study the religions of pre-Islamic Arabia have three main sources of information. The first, which was for a very long time was the only one used by historians, consists of the external historical records. The latter include the Assyrian chronicle that contained the earliest allusion to the religion of a population described as Arabs in a 7th century BC text. Also the classical literature, in which we find the earliest reference to the Arab goddess Allat, mentioned by the 5th century BC Greek historian Herodotus. And then also the Arabo-Islamic tradition that Ahmed just talked about, and the famous Kitab al-Asnan that he presented to us. But the second and most important source of information are, of course, provided by archaeology and the excavation of the ancient killed places. Through this channel, it becomes possible to explore aspects relating to the ritual practices, the religious architecture, the nature of sacral objects, and the relationship between the cults and territory. And the third source finally comes from epigraphy, so the study of the inscription carved by the ancient Arabians themselves that provide us with a first-hand testimony of their religious life. About religion, Arabian epigraphy can be used in two ways. So the first way is to go through all the inscriptions that present a religious character, as Ahmed has brilliantly showed us. And a second, and I will say more indirect way, could be to use onomasticon. So to go through the personal names of the author and of the inscription, in giving a special attention to a class of personal name called the Theophoric names. So the word Theophoric, which comes from Greek Theophoros, literally meaning carrying a god, refers to personal name that incorporate the name of a deity. Theophoric names are common in a multitude of onomastic groups, particularly in Semitic onomastica, where they generally consist of compound name made of a divine element and one or more other elements. So here is an example of one of the most common Arabic Theophoric name, Abdullah, which is made of the element Abd and Allah, meaning thus servant or worshipper of Allah. A fascinating aspect about this name is that although we could have been tempted to regard it as a pure Islamic name, it turns out that this name was actually one of the most common names among Arabs during antiquity. Another fascinating aspect about Semitic Theophoric name is that they are also extremely common in the West since the Middle Ages and the development of Christianity. Here are the example of two names I choose purely by chance, believe me, Juan and Michael, that most people could be tempted to regard as purely Spanish and English names, while they actually represent transcription of two Semitic Theophoric names derived from the Hebrew name Yohanan and Michael. About the name Michael, I find it very interesting to see that the name is actually known in pre-Islamic Arabia and attested in several Tymanitic inscriptions, showing that it should actually be taken as a common West Semitic name rather than a purely Hebrew or Aramaic name. The same is true with the biblical name Gabriel or Jibril, that is now in a Talmudic inscription from the Hayyu area, as you can see here. So, Theophoric names are therefore generally considered as a useful analysis element to study the ancient religion in Arabia, since they tend to reflect the devotion to a particular deity or eventually some current fashion in theology. As a matter of fact, Theophoric names are in some cases the only element we have at our disposal to grab some information about the cult and religion of certain people from Arabia. This is notably the case of the people who left the so-called Talmudic inscription, whose text consists exclusively of love inscription with not a single prayer. The Theophoric name attested among the Onomasticon of the author are therefore the only evidence we can find about their belief and cults. And the strong relationship between Theophoric name and the religious life is also reflected in the important onomastic reform initiated by the Prophet Muhammad. As well known, the Prophet established new rules in the attribution of personal name, which result in the banning of all the Arabic Theophoric name based on the name of pagan deities. Historiography recalled the example of several companions of Muhammad whose Theophoric name were changed by the Prophet himself. But that being said, the exploitation of Theophoric name should not be done without exercising great caution. Although it is true that a specific devotion could influence the choice to a specific Theophoric name, honoring a specific deity, this is far from being always the case. On the one hand, we have the example of several names that have spread completely independently from the cults. And on the other hand, we also have numerous names that continued to be used and passed down from generation to generation, although the deities they honor were not worshipped anymore. This is notably the case of all the so-called Hellenistic names, namely the El-based Theophoric names, such as Michael and Gabriel I just mentioned. This Hellenistic name actually consists of the most widespread and common Theophoric name in Northern Arabia, although it seems likely that the cult of El has been abandoned for a long time, since we do not have a single inscription honoring El in Northern Arabia. And let me give you two other illustrations of this. First, the Paleo-Arabic inscription from Zabad, whose author has the pagan name Amat Manaf in his genealogy, although he is unambiguously a Christian. And here is a more extreme example. If you are Jordanian and Debke fans, you will immediately recognize this gentleman, Omar al-Abdallat, a very nice example showing that in spite of Muhammad onomastic reform, certain Arab polytheistic Theophoric name continued to be used as tribal or family name until nowadays. So after this theoretical reminder and call for caution, let's have a look at the Theophoric name Northwest Arabia and see certain aspects of their evolution. By Northwest Arabia, I take into account the area which extends in the west from Petra up to Medina, and in the east from the upper Wadi Sirhan up to the Hail region. In that region, the ancient inhabitants produced several thousands of inscriptions that we commonly class according to their scripts, list of which is given here, with on the one hand the so-called ancient North Arabian inscription, and on the other hand all the script deriving from Aramaic. So two remarks about Safaitic and Nabatean. With respect to Safaitic, I have only taken into account the Safaitic inscription attested in Saudi Arabia. Sorry for that, but I was a bit afraid to go through all the almost 30,000 of inscription in Syria and Jordan, but maybe we will go through this one day. And about Nabatean, I also have not taken into account the name attested in the inscription from Sinai. On the one hand, once again, because this region stands out of my research area, but also because I observed that the Sinai Nabatean Onomasticon present many linguistic and internal peculiarities, in particular with regard to the Theophoric name. Among the latter, for instance, we find several names that contain the name of two deities that are now attested elsewhere from Sinai. Al-Baal, which is who is an Arabicized form of the god Baal, and a mysterious god named Ahyu. So let's go through the morphology and grammatical structure of those Theophoric names. As previously indicated, the Theophoric name from Northwest Arabia all consist of compound names. All epigraphic category combined, they tend to be of four morphological types: a genitive compound, a nominal sentence, a verbal sentence, and finally a prepositional or pronominal phrase. If we leave aside the prepositional names which are immediately recognizable, it is actually extremely difficult to establish whether we are dealing with a genitive compound, a nominal sentence, or a verbal sentence, particularly with the name attested in the ancient North Arabian inscription because of the lack of vocalization. The example of the King of Dadan names Mat'ail offers a perfect illustration of this problem, since it can actually be interpreted in three ways, as either a genitive compound, a nominal sentence, or a verbal sentence. So it is therefore only when we are dealing with very common names such as Taimullah or Wahaballah that we can be sure about the morphological type, or when we are dealing with verbal sentence names that contain a verb conjugated in the prefix conjugation. About this, it is interesting to observe that those names, in contrast to ancient South Arabia and Northwest Semitic onomastica, are quite rare in Northwest Arabia, being recurrently attested only in Taimanitic and the Danitic. And by the way, it is worth noting that among the few names that recur across these different categories stand the name Ishmael, which, as you all know, is associated to the tribe of Northern Arabia in the biblical tradition. So, with respect to the divine elements attested in those names, as in most of the West Semitic onomastica, they can be of two types: the name of a deity or a substitute for the divine name. But in this presentation, I will only take into account the divine name, but we can, of course, talk about the substitute during the discussion if you wish. So, after reviewing all the Theophoric names attested in the various categories of inscription from Northwest Arabia, I have therefore been able to identify a total of 46 different divine names. Among the latter, one can see that we have four main groups of divine names that we can classify as common Semitic deities, local deities, foreign deities, and lastly, elements of Christianity. So here's the list of the 4 attested foreign deities, among which we can distinguish some Egyptian, Mesopotamian, Moabite, Edomite, and South Arabian deities. The striking fact that is immediately obvious is that these names honoring foreign deities are almost exclusively found in writing tradition that are associated with settled people. The Danitic, Taimanitic, Imperial Aramaic, and Nabatean. They certainly reflect contact of these communities with remote regions through the caravan trade. So I have classified the 9 following deities as common, or let's say pan-Semitic deities. Among them, we naturally find the god El, who, very important point, represent the only deity attested in all the epigraphic groups. As you can see, El also represents the god who holds the record for the most name, with a total of 117 El base name attested in the Danitic. That being said, you can observe that this so-called Hellenistic name become rarer in the 3 last epigraphic group that are listed in the table: Samudic D, Nabateo-Arabic, and Paleo-Arabic. An important point which tells something about the evolution of the Arabic onomasticon during the Common Era. And here are the 8 other deities. Among the latter, only Shams, the sun deity, is found in more than 4 writing traditions, although one should note that the Shams name are not common at all, being attested with maximum of 6 occurrences in mixed Sapphitic Ismailic. So then we find about 27 local, or let's say North Arabian deities. Here, I think that we can proceed to sub-classification in 4 groups: early North Arabian deities, Hijazi deities, Nabatean deities, and the last group of 3 deities that are more difficult to grasp. By early North Arabian deities, I refer to a group of 12 deities whose cults are documented in what seems to constitute the oldest ancient North Arabian writing tradition in northern Arabia: Dumaitic, Taimanitic, Dadanitic, and Tamudic B. Among them, 4 deities, so Rudau, Atar Sama, Nuhai, and Da'ai, are mentioned in the aforementioned 7th century BC Assyrian inscription, which confirm their antiquity. On the other hand, only one of them, Thon, continued to be worshipped during the Nabatean period, while the memory of none of them, with the exception of Rudau, has been preserved by the Arabo-Islamic author. So I think that this gives us, that this constitutes a hint telling us that the cult of this deity has certainly started to decline sometime in the later part of the 1st millennium BC. So here is the list of the Theophoric name honoring these 12 deities, and without surprise, we can see that this is mainly in Dumaitic, Taimanitic, Dadanitic, Samudic B, and Imperial Aramaic that they are attested, with some very rare exception in Nabatean and mixed Sapphitic Ismailic. Then I have gathered under the label Hijazi deities 9 god and goddess, among whom we find the most famous and iconic Arab deities of pre-Islamic Arabia, namely Allah and his 3 daughters, Allat, Manat, and Al-Uzza, without forgetting Hubal too. Interestingly, there is no trace of these deities in the Assyrian historical text, and their names does not appear neither among the Arabian Theophoric compound name recorded in various cuneiform documents from both the Neo-Assyrian period and the Neo-Babylonian period. As mentioned above, this is Herodotus who mentioned Allah for the first time, and it is also in an Aramaic inscription dating more or less from the same period, carved by King of Kedar, that we find the earliest epigraphic mention of Allah. Similarly, it is also in Imperial Aramaic inscription from Taima, paleographically datable from the 4th century BC, that we find the earliest traceable mention of Manat and Manaf. On the basis of these few clues, we can therefore deduce that the cult of these deities started to develop only from the middle of the 1st millennium BC. And I wonder if we should not connect this religious phenomenon with the development of the kingdom of Lihyan that took place at the same period. Since it is at Dadan, Higra, and Taima that we find the earliest mention of these deities, and that their cult remained popular in the region of the Hijaz, as tell us the Arabic Islamic tradition with the cult of Al-Uzza, Manat, and Allat at the Kaaba, I think that Hijazi was an appropriate name for them. So here is the list of the Theophoric name containing the names of Allah and Allat. Allat names are not very numerous nor very popular, since we observe that the two most common names, Time of Lat and Wahab al-Lat, never occur more than 4 and 8 times, respectively. On the other hand, the Allah names show a very complex, appear to be extremely popular. As we can see, they definitely consist of the most popular Theophoric name in West Arabia.
Jérôme, I'm sorry, you have one more minute.
Yes.
Two.
Okay. So, and an interesting thing is that the Allah name are also not attested in certain epigraphic groups, such as Talmudic B and Taimanitic. There is only one certain occurrence of the name Time Allah in Talmudic B, which is in a text by the same person. Here's the list of the other Hijazi deities. And once again, we see that they are mainly attested in Dadanitic, Nabatean, Ismaic, and Sapphitic. Here are 3 deities that I will consider as maybe specifically Nabatean, which is certain for Dusha and much more debatable maybe for the 2 others. But once again, we see an interesting association of Nabatean and Ismaic. And then a group of 3 deities of which we have much more information. Al-Ahwar and Hawar can maybe be interpreted as Nabatean deities, but we know that the cult of Al-Ahwar is also attested in Qaryat al-Faw, so maybe we should think about the most Western Arabian common deity. While about Yahuth, we know that the Islamic Arabo tradition relates him to the tribe of Madhij, but it's not certain how we should trust this information. And finally, we have 2 elements that definitely relate, that connected to Christianity, with the element Al-Illah that we find in the Theophoric name Abdul-Illah, and the element Al-Masih that we find in the very nice, innovated Arabo-Christian name Abdul-Masih. And without surprise, so these 2 names are attested in Paleo-Arabic inscriptions. So that was my final name, final words. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jérôme. That was fascinating. I look forward to reading it in publication, because I think one needs more time to absorb it. Anyway, so now we're going to ask Foucaline Ford, I'm sorry.
So I would really like to have you